The X-Men universe is filled with mutants from all walks of life who vary in terms of their powers and abilities. While every mutant has specialized powers, some are undeniably more powerful than others. These mutants have been classified as Omega-level mutants, while some have attained even higher power. Also known as the Beyond Omega mutants, today we are going to explore the top 15 most powerful mutants in the X-Men universe and tell you everything about them. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Franklin Richards. To kick off this list, we have none other than the legendary Franklin Richards, the son of Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman from the Fantastic Four team. While Franklin hoped to enjoy a normal childhood, he displayed mutant abilities right from birth due to his parents' radiation-altered genes. He hoped to enjoy a normal childhood, at least until his powers strengthened, but his plan was thrown right out the window when Annihilus used a powerful machine to trigger Franklin's complete psionic potential. Franklin could warp reality on a universal scale, and he was undeniably the most powerful entity that had come out of the X-Men universe. In fact, his father was terrified that Franklin might fail to control his energy and destroy all life on the planet, so he took a drastic measure to send him into a comatose state to prevent him from projecting his energy. Eventually, Franklin woke up from his coma and started experimenting with his powers, and he often used them to peek into alternative futures, among other things. He soon joined the Power Pack superhero team and used his reality warping abilities, among other things, to single-handedly restore the multiverse after the Incursion Crisis. Franklin has gained beyond Omega-level mutant status due to his energy projection, telekinesis, telepathy, and immortality. Matthew Malloy. Described as more than an Omega-level mutant by Dr. McCoy, and even perceived as an Omega threat by Director Hill, Matthew Malloy wielded godlike powers. He exerted control over life and death, and he was a nearly invulnerable being who could bring himself back to life in the face of a fatal incident. He was known for his reality warping abilities, and he could even manipulate all forms of energy or summon them from different dimensions to create powerful blasts in his home reality. Matthew initially had quite a normal life as he lived alongside his wife in South Carolina, around the same time as the Skrull invasion on Earth. While they were having an argument, Matthew's wife was killed by a Skrull attack, and he had to relocate to Newberry to get over the trauma of witnessing his wife's death. As he struggled with his emotions, he ran into his wife's sister, who tried to comfort him, but her words only evoked negative feelings within him and triggered his mutant abilities. Matthew ended up generating an energy blast that killed his wife's sister and even destroyed his surroundings, and he was soon discovered by Director Hill. Hill sent a team to subdue Matthew, but he attacked them and caused even more damage before teleporting to the Jean Grey school and killing Emma Frost. Matthew's abilities seemed uncontrollable, and Professor X finally intervened and sent an X-Man named Tempest to the past to undo Matthew's birth and erase him from existence. The Marquee of Death. Also known as Clyde Wincham, the Marquee of Death is probably one of the most iconic supervillains in the history of Marvel Comics. He had a wicked personality, and he was known for taking pleasure in punishing others in sadistic ways. Just like most beyond Omega-level beings on this list, the Marquee of Death had godlike reality warping abilities, and he would often make a game out of creating illusions that would torture his opponents in horrifying ways. For instance, he once offered a bait deal to Reed Richards, asking him to let his son die to save the rest of reality. He also once conjured up the illusion of paradise to convince Doom that he had emerged victorious and settled down for years, only to shatter this illusion and mock him within a matter of seconds. The Marquis was also nearly impossible to defeat, as he had attained mastery over time and concepts such as death, eternity, and the workings of infinite universes. In fact, almost every single hero and villain in the entirety of the Marvel Universe had to join hands with his alternate universe version to weaken him enough for Dr. Doom to finally shoot the final blow and put an end to his reign of terror. Vulcan. Vulcan has one of the most fascinating origin stories, as he was removed from Catherine Summers' body as an unborn baby and placed in an incubator accelerator. Here, he aged until he reached prime adolescence, and he was then carted off to Earth to serve Emperor Devan Shakari. Fortunately, he managed to escape, and then stumbled across Moira McTaggart, who helped him get a better hold on his powers. While he initially went by the name Gabriel, he eventually chose the name Vulcan around the same time Professor Xavier realized he was linked to Catherine Summers' other son, Cyclops. Vulcan soon became a part of the X-Men and got acquainted with his brother, but he turned rogue along the way and set his eyes upon becoming the Emperor of the Shi'ar Empire. While Vulcan was originally an Omega-level mutant, he eventually absorbed the energies of the depowered mutants during the M-Day story arc and attained Omega-level status. While he could siphon other beings' powers, he was best known for his energy absorption abilities, allowing him to absorb and channel any form of energy to shoot deadly blasts. The Beyonder. Known for his limitless psionic abilities, the Beyonder could affect realities in ways beyond his imagination. He was one of the most powerful beings in the X-Men universe, and he could bend reality, teleport, and even self-repair. In fact, he was quite literally the universe in his native realm, meaning he essentially made up this reality known as the Beyond Realm. In an unfortunate turn of events, a lab technician named Owen Reese accessed this dimension and turned into Molecule Man after fusing with the energies that had escaped from the Beyond Realm. The rest of the energies turned sentient, and the Beyonder then used it to create a planet known as Battle World, where he gathered a large number of heroes and villains and pitted them against each other. He was quite amused by the battle between good and evil, and he's appeared at different points in the Marvel Universe to stir up trouble. Nathaniel Gray. Also known as X-Man, Nathaniel Gray was genetically engineered by Mr. Sinister with the help of Cyclops and Jean Grey's DNA. His parents were two of the most accomplished mutants in the X-Men universe, and he inherited their abilities to grow into a beyond Omega-level mutant with the most powerful psionic abilities ever seen. He was viewed as a godlike entity, capable of destroying complete universes if he ever desired. In fact, he could defeat Jean Grey when it came to psionic abilities when she was an accomplished mutant, and he was barely getting the hang of his powers, which is a true testament to his abilities. He wasn't always considered to be a beyond Omega mutant, and his powers were even burnt out by the Omega Machine for a brief period. However, he eventually gained them back with the help of the Celestial Life Seed, and he then grew more powerful than ever and attained beyond Omega status. Nathaniel was capable of warping reality by even conjuring an image in his subconscious, and he even once managed to kidnap all mutants and compel them to live in his reality. Legion. Also known as David Haller, Legion was the son of Professor Xavier and Gabrielle Haller, who had a passionate time in Israel, but sadly went their own ways afterwards. Xavier was even unaware that Gabrielle was pregnant, and he only learned this sometime after the establishment of the New Mutants. Eventually, Gabrielle married Daniel Shamron, and David ended up witnessing his stepfather's death right before his eyes. It was this event that triggered his latent psionic abilities, and he ended up completely incinerating the killer's brains. However, his powers were so strong that he ended up forming a telepathic connection with them as they died, and he was pretty traumatized by this experience. He ended up going into a catatonic state, and his consciousness even merged with one of the assassins named Jamail Karami. Over the course of his story arc, David managed to get rid of Karami's consciousness, and he was eventually cared for by Dr. Moira McTaggart and Professor Xavier. Somewhere along the way, he worked alongside the New Mutants, but he was often considered to be an anti-hero, and he even had severe dissociative anxiety disorder. Despite all his trauma, Legion remains a powerful mutant, and he can create numerous spontaneous mutations with varying abilities within himself. Jamie Braddock. Also known as the King of Avalon, Jamie Braddock was the older brother of Brian Braddock and the son of Lady Elizabeth and Sir James Braddock. While he had two siblings who displayed mutant abilities, Jamie did not reveal his powers until after his parents were brutally murdered by a sentient computer known as the Mastermind. After their deaths, Jamie was taken in and tortured by an African lord named Dr. Crocodile and Witch Woman, whose sadistic ways finally triggered Jamie's latent reality warping abilities. He was freed by TechNet, and he then owned his abilities to become one of the most dangerous entities in the Marvel Universe. He could quite literally turn the world upside down, and he even resurrected Psylocke after Vargas brutally killed her. Jamie is said to be one of the 4 beings blessed by the First Fallen, which further augmented his powers. While Jamie was eventually killed during a face-off with Black Widow, he was brought back to life by the Five. Apocalypse soon summoned him to work as a pawn in his attempts to unite the underworld, and it was during this time that he was appointed as the King of Avalon. Jamie's reality warping was a byproduct of his quantum string manipulation abilities, which allowed him to view the universe as a combination of numerous invisible quantum strings that could be tugged, tightened, loosened, or twisted to change the course of reality. Mr. M. While not much is known about Mr. M's origins, we do know that he was born in Belgium and only traveled to the United States after his powers manifested. He soon located and settled down in Mutant Town, where he kept to himself and only went out at night to get drunk. He even dabbled in the lives of the other mutants and got into trouble on numerous occasions until he finally traveled to the Xavier Institute after the events of M-Day. Mr. M was known for wielding nearly omnipotent power and having complete control over molecular structures. He could manipulate matter and energy on a subatomic level, thereby reshaping reality and tangible objects into any form that he desired. As an extension of his molecular manipulation abilities, Mr. M could trigger others' mutant powers, phase through any object, generate force fields, and even scramble biological structures to hurt his victims. His abilities surpassed those of Omega-level mutants, and he was even capable of creating and evolving life forms. Jean Grey as the Phoenix. While Jean Grey is known for her powerful telepathic abilities as an Omega-level mutant, her powers are amplified beyond an Omega level after assuming her Phoenix form. Jean Grey's association with the Phoenix Force makes her an intensely powerful being capable of resurrecting herself even in the face of fatality. Moreover, we all know that Jean Grey has quite a track record for dying and reappearing throughout her story arc, and the Phoenix Force further granted her the ability to resurrect. She first came across this force on a space mission alongside the Fantastic Four, wherein the Phoenix Force scanned her and sensed that she had unlimited potential. Eventually, this force chose her to be its human host, and Jean Grey soon assumed the form of the Phoenix. While she was already super powerful, the Phoenix Force augmented her empathy, telepathy, and telekinesis, enabling her to travel across the vacuum of space without any aid. Hope Summers. Known as Cable and Hope Summers' adoptive daughter, Hope was a mutant child who had been born just after the events of House of M. Since no mutants had been born for a long time after this story arc, she was at great risk of being killed by the Purifiers. But Cable saved her life and took her in. In order to protect her, Cyclops suggested that Cable should take her to New Liberty in the future and raise her alongside his wife, Hope. The younger Hope grew up amid a lot of chaos, and she often dabbled in time travel after being stuck in the midst of a conflict between Strife, Cable, and the X-Force. She had a wide range of powers and abilities, and it's said that the upper limit of her abilities is yet to be determined. While most mutants needed to be in physical contact with their subjects, Hope could affect her victims from a distance. She could fire optic and concussive blasts, absorb others' powers and auras, and even perform telekinesis and telepathy. Among these abilities, Hope was known best for her power absorption capabilities, which enabled her to borrow just about anyone else's powers. Scarlet Witch, Wanda Maximoff. Also known as the Scarlet Witch, Wanda Maximoff is a Romani sorceress who has taken over the Marvel Universe, or even the multiverse at times, with her chaos magic. After being orphaned at a young age, Scarlet Witch and her brother, Quicksilver, came across the High Evolutionary at Mount Wundagore, where their powers were soon enhanced. Wanda became a conduit for chaos magic, which granted her the ability to warp reality by using hexes. She was rescued by Magneto, who convinced her to join the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants and fight for his mutant supremacy propaganda. However, Wanda soon disagreed with Magneto over his harsh opinions against humans and left the team with her brother to join hands with the Avengers instead. Over the years, she received training in magic from none other than the legendary witch Agatha Harkness, and she soon fell for her Avengers teammate Vision. Wanda and Vision had quite a tumultuous story arc, and she went down a path of insanity after his death. Unable to cope with the trauma, she created a new reality where she lived with her husband and 2 kids. But this reality was soon shattered. Wanda then unleashed a powerful attack that triggered the events of the House of M. Wanda's abilities knew no end. She was inarguably a beyond Omega level character who even managed to take away all of the mutant superpowers in a process known as mutant decimation. Exodus. Born as Bennett du Paris in the 12th century, Exodus soon became friends with Eobard Garrington, and they embarked on a quest to discover the Tower of Peroa. While he had only signed up for this adventure, he ended up on a path where he gained mutant powers. After Eobard abandoned the quest, an angered Bennett continued the journey alone when a strange voice approached him and asked him if he was willing to risk his life to become one of the strongest beings of all time. While he underwent a test, his mutant abilities finally manifested, and he was then captured by Apocalypse, who further augmented his dormant mutant genes and transformed him into Exodus from the 20th century. After this incident, Exodus practically started serving Apocalypse, but he eventually left his side. This doesn't mean that he entirely turned over a new leaf, and he continued to stir up trouble for the X-Men and earned a reputation as one of the most powerful beings in their rogue gallery. Among other things, Exodus was known for his advanced regenerative healing factor, and he also had superhuman durability, telekinesis, and telepathic abilities that helped him win against numerous X-Men teams at once. Gabriel Shepard. Gabriel Shepard was one of the proto-mutants from an offshoot reality, and he surpassed his peers to such a great extent that he managed to avoid all witch hunts against their kind. Since he was the only survivor, Gabriel changed his identity over the centuries to blend in with humans without attracting any attention. While the X-Men eventually managed to track him down, Gabriel used his telepathic abilities on them and discovered that most of the proto-mutants had been used as weapons after they were initially killed. He was quite angered by this information, and he tried to attack them, but was soon transported to Antarctica by Pixie. He then vowed that he would never let any X-Men misuse the proto-mutants in the future, and as a precautionary measure, he dispersed himself into energy after having lived on for many, many years. As a proto-mutant, Gabriel had near-omnipotent powers and was best known for his superhuman strength and durability. He could also read others' minds or communicate with them telepathically over long distances, and he used this ability to conjure mental shields that could prevent others from peeking into his mind. He was further known for his transmutation powers, which allowed him to disassemble and reassemble molecules and even turn matter into energy and vice versa. He displayed this ability towards the end of his story arc, where he turned his bodily matter into energy to ensure that the X-Men could never use him as a weapon. Storm. Also known as Aurora Monroe, Storm descended from an ancient line of African priestesses who all possessed the same physical features in the form of white hair and piercing blue eyes. Besides inheriting these genes, Storm further had the ability to use magic, and she was first discovered by Professor Xavier as a child. At just 6 months old, Storm's parents died in an accident when a plane crashed into their home, and she somehow survived and was taken in by Ahmed al-Jabbar. Jabbar trained her in thievery, and she once tried to pickpocket Professor Xavier's pocket, who sensed her mutant brainwaves. He decided to leave her alone for the time being, and Storm eventually traveled across the Sahara Desert and had a brief romantic encounter with T'Challa, Hydra before going down separate paths. Several years later, she encountered the X-Men and helped them defeat Deluge, after which Xavier finally decided to recruit her. She had quite a successful career with the X-Men team and gained a reputation as one of the most powerful mutants to ever walk on Earth. Among other things, she could manipulate the weather to an extent where she could generate lightning, rain, moisture, or even thunderstorms and hurricanes, and her mutant powers helped her form a psychic bond with Earth's primal forces. Besides this, her ancient background with magic and witchcraft further strengthened her position among other mutants, making her more than worthy of her title as a Beyond Omega mutant. Marvelous verdict. And with that, we come to the end of our list of the top 15 Beyond Omega level mutants who have terrorized and also saved the X-Men universe on numerous occasions. From powerful reality warpers such as Franklin Richards and Matthew Malloy to villainous mutants such as the Marquee of Death and Exodus, the X-Men universe is overflowing with top-notch characters with godlike abilities, and we want to know your favorites in the comments below. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.
Measure. It is time to go.